I'd like to take this opportunity before we begin to thank Rabbi Silver on behalf of the shul for his tremendous work for that Shavuos companion, that beautiful Shavuos companion that we received in our mail. It was his idea, it was his initiative, and his effort. And God willing, it will make the Yom Tov experience for each and every one of us all the more meaningful and help us feel that much more connected to each other in the shul. So really a big, big yasher koach. Thank you so much. I also would like to thank our sponsors for this drasha, Bev Morris and Art Boyers, in honor of Simi and Sammy Franco, and also Arlene Groner in memory of her paternal grandparents' yortzites, Shmuel ben Avraham on the 10th of Sivan, and Rachel Bas Yaakov HaKohen on the 14th of Sivan. Zichronim Levracha, their neshamos should have aliyos. So I have to confess that I frequently have a little bit of difficulty relating to Shavuos. It might sound like a strange statement. I try. I think the Yom Tovim are such emotionally, spiritually, and emotionally significant times on the Jewish calendar. And I try every Yom Tov to think about an idea that I can relate to that can make the Yom Tov more meaningful for myself. And maybe this says something about me. I don't know if it's good or bad, but frequently the idea that I think about is something that I can connect to on an emotional level. Not only an intellectual level, but an emotional level. So Pesach is relatively easy. I mean, you can think of different ideas, but on a basic level, Pesach is, my gosh, the Jewish people were in slavery. The Jewish people, their lives were so limited, and then God chose them. What an amazing thing. And to this day, God looks at us as his chosen people, and it started on Pesach. Sukkot, the Jewish people were in the desert. How could they survive in the desert? And miraculously, day after day, month after month, year after year, but by the goodness of God, they survived. And we can relate to that in all subsequent times, in whatever way God is helping us in our lives. Shavuos, we received the Torah. Shavuos, it's amazing that we received the Torah. We say, Kihem Chayin Baruch Yameinu. It's our life, it's the length of our days, it's God's greatest gift to the world, is the Torah. But I don't have the same emotional tie-in. The human element of think of this situation and think of this person and think of the emotions involved. It's, wow, the Torah is amazing, and it is amazing, and Ashreinu Matov Cholkeinu, how fortunate we are. But on that emotional level, there's something that's a little more difficult for me. It's I'm sure a shortcoming of myself. But I wanted to share with you a thought that I actually came across in the writings of Rosenbaum just a few weeks ago. I apologize to my Sunday morning class if this is somewhat of a rerun, but I think it was such a meaningful idea that I'd like to share it with everyone. The famous Medrash cited by Rashi says that when the Jewish people stood at Har Sinai, famously it says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Har. Vayichan is in the singular. He, meaning the Jewish people as one, camped there opposite the mountain. The Medrash says, Ki ish echad b'lev echad. The reason why it says it in the singular is they were as one person of one heart. And the truth is, when we think about it, we focus a lot on the first half of the phrase. Ki ish echad is one person. What does it mean, b'lev echad, of one heart? What does that mean? And Rosenbaum says what I found to really be a remarkable thought. Rosenbaum says that the Jewish people, each and every member of Klal Yisrael, standing there at Har Sinai, had the exact same reaction instantaneously to Moshe's presentation to the Jewish people. If you look in the Psukim near the beginning of Perek Yud Tes, it's the reading for the first morning of Shavuos. God tells Moshe a few things that he should tell the Jewish people about what it is to accept the Torah. It says in the pasuk, "Vayanu kol ha'am yachdav vayomru." All of them answered together and they said, "Kol asher diber Hashem naseh." Everything which God said, we will do. Says Rav Volba, when Moshe Rabbeinu posed the question to the Jewish people, they all reacted immediately with heart and soul in the exact same way. We'll do it. They were belev echad. They were of one heart. Emotionally, they were of one heart. It wasn't that the spokespeople thought it was a good idea and then they voted on it, or that 98% of the people said, yes, we'll do it, and the 2% kind of muttered it along. Everybody felt the exact same way. How could that be? How is it even possible? How is it possible that the exact same reaction? And Rav Volba says the reason why they had the exact same reaction is because the Torah is fundamentally connected to the core of the Jewish soul. So their feelings about accepting the Torah, deep down inside each and every one of them, was identical, because there's a piece of our soul that's identical and it's fundamentally connected to the Torah. And to me, that's a remarkable thing to think about. That yes, intellectually, I believe that God created the world and God knows better than any of us ever will what's right and what's wrong in this world. And God knows how we can access spirituality, and God knows the best way we should lead our lives. God knows all of these things. And we're so fortunate to have this directive from God. We're so fortunate. But the Torah at its core speaks to who I am. You know, it's an interesting thing to think about how many times, whether it be ourselves, whether it be somebody we meet and we're talking to, you're at a shiur, and there's something there. It's besides intellectual stimulation. It's besides that your heartstrings are pulled. There's something there that just speaks to you. I'm sure many people who have had times learning in a serious advanced way in yeshiva and seminary can think back to moments where they really were applying themselves and the Torah spoke to them. That's more than intellect, and that's more than emotion. That's the core of who I am. And that Torah that spoke to Bnei Yisrael at Har Sinai before they even actually received it, but the excitement for it, deep down, if we reach deep enough down, we can feel that too. And some of us have had the schus, many of us have had the schus, have had the good fortune to have that moment at some point in our lives. I just want to develop the idea further, really. Rav Volba does. He quotes Rav Eliezer Kaplan, Zichrono Livracha, who was the mashgiach in the Chafetz Chaim's yeshiva in Radin. And there's a phrase, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the phrase, Dvar mayotzim min halev, nichnasim al halev. Words that come from the heart, enter the heart, which is normally understood to mean that if I'm speaking with true sincerity to you and I really mean what I'm saying, deep down you'll appreciate that I really mean it, and it will resonate with you. It will get there. If it comes from my heart, it will get to your heart. And it's a beautiful idea, and it normally is understood as being a statement about the value of sincerity, and we could all understand when words are said truly with sincerity. And that is the most basic understanding of that quote. So Rav Kaplan said something else. He said, here's the thing. If I say something to you, and those are words that come from my heart, you know what it means that they come from my heart? It means more than I really mean it. It means that I've reached deep within myself, and I feel this is the right thing for me to do. This is the right thing for me to say. They will connect to the depth of your being. Why are we so sure? Why are we so sure that if I say something for the depth of my being, it will connect to the depth of your being? The reason why we're so sure is because the Jewish soul is fundamentally connected to the Torah, which means that if I reach deep down within myself and really think about it and really reflect and grapple with it and decide what I've got to do, I'm tapping into a spiritual plane that's core to me, and it's equally core to you. So this becomes a connector for us. It's a fascinating way to think about unity, to think about how each of us connect to Hashem and His Torah. And the more I connect to Hashem and His Torah, the more I connect to you. It brings to mind the beautiful quote, Yisrael v'oraisa v'kudsha brichu chadhu, that the Jewish people and the Torah and God are all one. We're all interconnected. But as we reflect on this idea of the more I'm connected to Torah, the more I'm connected to my fellow Jew, I'd like to share with you an interesting thought from the Kli Yakar, and I apologize, I guess this is rerun Thursday, because the Ali Shur, the Revolva, was from one thing I learned in my Sunday morning class, and the Kli Yakar was from something I learned in the Parsha class this week. So I guess I'm particularly apologetic to those who attend both of those classes. Perak Yud Tes Pasuk Beis, Vayisu Merfidim. This is, we quoted part of the pasuk before. Vayisu Merfidim. The Jewish people traveled from the place called Merfidim. Vayavo Midbar Sinai, and they came to the Sinai desert. Vayachanu Bamidbar, and they camped in the desert. Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Ahar, and he, Israel, camped opposite the mountain, and that's this singular point that we say is Kish Echad B'Lev Echad, like one person of one heart. So the Kli Yakar says, he asks interesting questions on the pasuk. I don't want to take the time for that. But the Kli Yakar says that the first phrase in the pasuk is Vayisu Merfidim. They traveled from a place called Refidim. The Kli Yakar suggests that Refidim is related to the word Predim. Predim means they were separate from each other. They had a state of dispute before they started coming towards the Sinai desert. And they decided they were going to leave that. They were going to leave that attitude of dispute. They decided they needed to get along. They needed to have peace and tranquility with each other. So they, not just physically, but they emotionally departed from this state of refidim, of being at odds with each other. And they came to the desert, and they camped in the desert. And then and only then, once they're opposite the mountain, does it refer to them as the singular. If they decided that they weren't going to fight anymore, aren't they united? What's the Kli Yakar saying? They left a state of discord, and then only once they got to Har Sinai were they really united. So were they arguing on the way, or they were not arguing on the way? If they're not arguing on the way, and by the way, the reason why they didn't argue is because they wanted to be better united. So what's missing? And what comes out of the Kli Yakar is a very powerful point. This is something that a number of Mepharshim say in one way or another. But he says that when they camped opposite the mountain and they saw this relatively simple mountain was the spot on which God's Torah will be given, they understood a vital message, which is God was sending them a communication of the tremendous value of humility. This famous idea, Sinai was a relatively short mountain. It represents humility, and that humility is essential for the giving of the Torah. The Jewish people camped opposite Har Sinai, and they thought about the value of humility, and then and only then were they truly united. To be united is not to avoid argument. That's to avoid argument. To be united is for me to look at you and realize that whatever issues I have with you, I'm not as great as I think I am. I need to be more humble. If I'm not as great as I think I am, I'm going to be more understanding and accepting of you. And the greatest thing in my life is my connection with God and His Torah. And if that's the greatest thing in your life, then we could put everything else aside. That's unity. Not fighting is avoiding something. if I can view myself with humility, that impacts how I view you. And if I truly have humility, then I'm living with a higher purpose because I'm humble, because my life is not about my pursuit of the moment. My life is about what God wants from me in this world. And your life is actually about the same thing, what God wants from you. So we can connect in a meaningful way, and then we can be united. You know, I don't know. I don't know what you watching this video think. Uh, I think I think a lot of people, myself included, are a little bit becoming at loose ends. This is a stressful time. Many of us are stretched in even our basic schedules right now. Many of us have much tension, much anxiety, a lot of things we have to be worrying about, a lot of uncertainty. We're stressed out. And to be candid with you, I'm finding myself frequently not having as much patience with a person who calls on the phone as I would like to. Um, and I'm finding myself in conversations with people relating their own experiences. And many, many people are sharing with me in one way or another that they find themselves angry at this one, angry at that one. It's also a time where many of us have very strong views about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. We're, it's hard, and I think it's getting more and more difficult to be having the level of amicable relations that we normally try to have. And it really is a challenging time. But maybe Shavuos, maybe these ideas are maybe a little bit of an opportunity to press the reset button. Just a little bit. To think to myself that here it is on Shavuos, I'm celebrating the giving of the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you gave a gift to the Jewish people that through the generations speaks to our very core. Because the core of our neshama, of our soul, is about what you want from us in this world. And there's something about me that's fundamentally connected to every Jew on this planet. Not just a family tree, but my essence. And then to think of this idea of humility and to think to myself, look at this big, broad world that I have the merit to be a part of. This great world of spirituality. This great mission that God has for me. Mi anochi, who am I? I'm so small. And yet, look at this remarkable opportunity that I have. And you share that opportunity. If we think a little bit more that way, of these 2 points of the connection at my core and how fortunate I should feel to be on this journey and on this mission, maybe we can look at each other just a little bit differently. And I'd like to close with a true story. I heard it I heard it firsthand from one of the protagonists of the story, the protagonist of the story. I'd like to think of this as a little bit of a mushel for the broader issue that I'm talking about right now. I have to confess that I can't tell you all the details of the story because of personal sensitivities, but we'll try to capture the point. There was a young man and a young woman who were on the verge of becoming engaged. They really were quite in love with each other, and they were on the verge of becoming engaged. But there was one problem, and the problem was that there was something about the young man's family that was fundamentally at odds with this young woman and her family. And that's where I have to, unfortunately, not go into detail. We'll oversimplify it and we'll say that the fellow's family were big Yankees fans and the woman's family were big Red Sox fans. But please take my word for it. It was much more core than that. And the question was asked of the woman and her family. They asked it of the man, and they said, "How in the world will our daughter, sister, whatever, interact with your family if they're so fundamentally at odds about this issue that's so core to each of them?" And the fellow shared this conversation with me. And I asked him, I said, I don't know. What's the answer? I think you have to sit down. You have to have this whole existential discussion with your family, and they will accept it. They won't accept it. The fellow said something to me fascinating. He said, "You know what? I told hopefully my bride to be, that let's not worry about it just yet. And I think things will work out." Many of you know me, for the good or bad of it, I'm a little bit of a worrier. Honestly, the fellow told me he thinks things will work out. I thought to myself, what planet is this guy from? I don't know, you gotta make it work. And the fellow called me a little bit later, and he said to me, it all worked out just fine. I said, it all worked out just fine? How in the world did that happen? And he explained to me, basically, that his family got to meet this lovely, lovely woman. And his family saw how sweet the woman was, how kind and sincere she was. And obviously they saw how happy she made him. And the woman saw how kind and sincere his family was, and how they had such an impact in making the man who he was. And they each just decided to figure it out and not worry too much about this issue that up until this point was so central to both of them. And it still was central to both of them. But there was something more important. And what was more important was this union between man and woman. And everyone in the picture had great affection for this fine, fine man. And they realized, if we're going to be able to bring happiness to this man, we're going to have to just coexist. And if it's all about our relationship with this man who we all love so much, we'll do more than coexist. We'll become a united family together. I was very moved by that story. I wish there were more families who could work those kind of things out. It seems almost miraculous, to be honest with you. But think about that as a mushal for all kinds of disagreements in life. And even think about it as a mushal for something that I have a strong view about, that I think is important. And maybe you have a strong view about it. And maybe we don't agree, and you also think it's important. So all I can think about when I look at you is how you have the temerity and audacity to not do the right thing about this issue. But what if I could keep my eye on something even bigger? What if I could keep my eye on the fact that God and His Torah is core to who I am? That my mission in life to grow as a human being is core to who I am. And by the way, here's the humility piece. I try my best to figure out what I should do, but no one has all the answers. And my head and my heart tells me this is what I need to do. And you know what? I think I'm right. But maybe I'm wrong. Am I so sure that you're wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. There's one thing that I'm sure of. What I'm sure of is the reason I'm on this world is to grow as a human being. And the reason you're on this world is to grow as a human being. And if both of us are Jews, the core to that path is God and His Torah. If I think more about the overarching mission, maybe, just maybe, I can embrace you. And it doesn't have to be about our specific disagreements of the moment, no matter how important the issue might indeed be. So I want to wish everyone a wonderful Yom Tov. I'm so sorry that here we are coming to another Yom Tov. and we can't be together. Again, I hope everyone enjoys the companion. So grateful again to Rabbi Silver for making this happen. But let's think. The more we think about our connection with Hashem and His Torah, and the fact that everyone in Klal Yisrael is connected to Hashem and His Torah, the more we can truly feel united, even if we physically stand apart. Have a wonderful Yom Tov.